have to do anything. The scent of skin is strong enough. Huddle a little bit closer, babe. Let's see if I can warm you up.
My wife told me I should shoot a video today. I think I got the perfect title. Cold calling.
Just wait.
Not just any kind of cold calling. Let me explain. I just recently brought in a new crew to do cold calling for my real estate investing company. I wanted to prove a point that anyone with the proper training, with a good script, and the ability to handle objections can negotiate a strong lead count. So that's exactly what I'm going to show you guys. I'm going to show you how I was able to bring in a new cold calling team and get these kind of results. Now, what you're looking at is a total of 24 leads from a cold calling team with 1 week of experience. Now, the leads was gathered in a 3-week span, which averages out to somewhere around a lead a day. Not to mention, a couple of days we had multiple leads. So, stay tuned. I'm going to break down how you too can get your hands on my 5-star cold calling script and negotiating blueprint. Want to know how he did it? Check this out. Now, I know what you're probably wondering. Mad scientist, what is your 5-star cold calling script and negotiating blueprint? Now, before I get into all of that, make sure you like this video. Don't forget to hit that notification bell and be sure to share the channel with anyone that you think will benefit from the information that yours truly, the Mad Scientist, is giving to you. Now, this is exactly what I'm referring to. This is my new e-report. It's called my 5-star cold calling script and the negotiating blueprint. The best part about this script is that it is designed for a person or a team that is cold calling. As I mentioned earlier, we were able to get over 24 leads in a total of a 3-week span just by giving it to my new cold calling team. All I want you to do right now is watch this video. I'm going to show you exactly how to use it, break down the actual objections, how to handle them. So sit back, watch, and learn. Okay, as you can see, we are at the screen that shows you our 5-star cold calling script and negotiating blueprint. This is the actual e-report that I'm using in the real estate business for our virtual assistants to train them on what to say, how to say, and why the actual cold calling script is so important for the mindset of converting that cold prospect to a lead. And let's go through it and show you exactly what's inside. When you start off looking at this e-report, you're going to notice the first page, and it goes over the concepts that you need to understand before you start making that phone call. Let's begin. Before making the call, don't forget to smile. You see, the way you start that conversation off is going to be the path that conversation is going to take. And if you're starting that conversation off with a whole lot of crap going through your mind, upset, mad, angry, then that conversation inside subconsciously is going to have an effect on what you say and how you say it to those sellers. So keep that in mind. You want to start that conversation off with a smile on your face. Also, make sure when you speak to the seller, you call them by their name or their full name. If you've already gained the rapport of the seller, you can just call them by their first name. Remember, the person on the other end of the phone could be the key to your real estate investing success. So treat that person with respect and kindness at every time when you're on that phone. Now, when you start that conversation off, I want you to understand that you got to identify yourself, and also it doesn't hurt to be a little bit confused. Now, here's what I mean. You see where it's in blue, it says your cold call opening?
That's what I call the first thing that you should say when you're speaking to someone on the phone. And this is what it sounds like. Hello, my name is James and I'm with Chucky by Lucky Houses. I know I'm calling you out of the blue. It's because I saw a property at 109 Main Street and I'm not even sure if you're the owner, but I just want to see if Mr. Jackson is there, or if you're Mr. Jackson, I'd like to speak to you about this property. Now, listen to what I just said and how I said it. You know, I said it in a conversational style. That's the key. You gotta have a conversation with your sellers, not sounding like a robot. And then also injected in my actual voice a little inflection that was a little bit of confusion. You know, I'm not even sure if you're the owner of the property. Listen to that tone. You have to have what I like to call a conversational tonality, because the key to you building rapport is not sounding like a robot. So that's what you would say as your opening statement. Now, if the person is returning a call to you, this is what you can say in that situation. Hi, my name is James and my company is Chucky by Lucky Houses. I'm returning a call for a property that might be for sale. The address is 109 Main Street. Do I have the right number? Notice the tone in my voice. Notice the little bit of confusion that I put in my voice. Naturally, people want to try to help a person who they think is a little bit confused. So don't come out sounding like a robot or sounding all monotone. And you know what I mean when I say sounding all monotone. This is how a monotone person would sound. Hello, my name is, I'm with Chucky by Lucky Houses. I know I'm calling out of the blue. It's because I saw a property at 109 Main Street and I'm not even sure if you're the right owner. Am I speaking with the owner? Come on, man. Ladies, no one wants to have a conversation with that person. So basically what I'm saying is bring a little bit of personality in your conversation to give it more of a rapport building chance. Next page. Now, if you find out that you are speaking with the seller, there's a whole section that's going to talk about that. But let's go into if this isn't the person. And red is going to cover that part. Let's say, if speaking to the right person, but the seller says the property is no longer available for sale, they sold it, tell the seller this. I'm glad to hear you was able to sell the property. Do you happen to have any other properties you'd like to get rid of? You notice how I'm trying to find other opportunities if the seller said the property is sold. Well, here's another way. If speaking to someone at the right address who is not the owner, say the following. Could you please tell me what would be a good time to call back? I'd like to speak with the owner about the property. Now, that's what you would say if you're talking to somebody on the phone that is not the owner, but you do have the right property address. Last but not least, if speaking to the wrong number, say the following. I apologize, I have the wrong information. But by the way, you wouldn't happen to have a property that you're interested in selling, would you? Now, there's always an opportunity for a deal. Now, we're going to go down to this section where it says, if speaking to the owner, if you are speaking to the owner, this is the script you want to follow. Owner's first name. Hello, I'm the acquisition officer with Chucky by Lucky Houses. On average, we buy between 5 to 9 houses a month in the neighborhood. Now, I put neighborhood, city, or state because you can interchange that with whatever you want to use. Let's say in the Towson neighborhood, I'm calling you today to see if you would be interested in receiving an offer on your property at 109 Main Street. If the person says yes, you say the following. Is now a good time to talk to you about buying your property? If the person says no, you say, I understand completely. What would be a good time to call you back this evening? Now, stop for a second. You notice how I'm controlling that call back. A lot of new investors would say, well, when will be a good time for me to call you back? And wait for the actual person on the phone to give them a date further in the future. I want to control that process. So I'm asking that seller, when would be a good time for me to call you today? But suppose the seller says today isn't a good time. What would be a good time tomorrow? Remember, it's all about maintaining control of that situation. Now, let's go over the actual, what you say on your actual seller script. Now, this is what we use when we're interviewing prospects to see if they're interested in selling their property. If we get a yes, then we go ahead and go over this seller script. And this has all the questions. But look at how we don't just put it in a normal type of question. We sprinkle in a conversational style. And you'll see what I'm talking about. Seller's name. Obvious, we need the seller's name because we want to make sure we're dealing with the right person when we buy this property. Property address, of course, we need that information. Self-explanatory. Owner's address, self-explanatory. If the person doesn't live in the property we're talking about, we want to know what address they live at. Now, here's where the conversation style comes into play. If you're trying to get the phone number of the seller, instead of saying, what's your phone number? Here's an easy way to get that information. You can say, is this the best phone number for you? You listen to what I said. Is this the best phone number for you? You posed it in the form of a question that they can only answer in a number of ways. Answer number one, no, but here's my best number you can call me at. Or, yes, this is the best number for me. And of course, we already understand that we probably have a good phone number because we got them on the phone. But you don't know if that's the best phone number. The number we have could be the phone number to the house, but not the phone number to their actual mobile device. Because some older households have a home phone and a mobile phone. So that's the reason for that question. Here's something else. The next question. This goes in regards to if you want to get that email address. And I would urge each and every one of you to make sure you get the email address. It is so important because when we go into responding back to that person, we send person our credibility kit. We send people our letter of intent and so on, communication-wise. Email is still a very responsive tool to use to get communication. It's not just text. It's not just voicemail. It's not just cold calling. Email is still a viable part. So I would urge you to get that email address whenever possible. And this is one of the best ways in which you can get that question from that seller in order to get that email address. Here you go. If we need to email you, what would be the best way we can get that information over to you if we want to send you our contact information or property details? How could we get that information over to you? You see, I asked it in the form of a question where there's only one of two answers. I don't have an email address, or, well, here's the best email address you can send it to. So don't just ask the question to be asking it. Bring into a conversational style to build that rapport. Next, we're going to go into, is the property occupied? The reason why you want to know that is because if the property is occupied by someone other than the homeowner, you want to know if they're renting the property out, what kind of situation that is. If it's a rental situation, it's a matter of, okay, well, how much rent are they getting? Then I want to go into the question of how long is the lease? If we're in Maryland, I want to go into the question, is the property registered? Is the property lead free or lead safe? All these types of questions goes into that occupied question. The next question, is your property listed with an agent? Why? I want to know that. If it is listed with an agent, I got to understand that I may have to go through an agent in order to get this offer accepted. Because in most situations, when you're talking to a seller, at this point, they'll tell you, well, I'm not dealing with the property right now. I have it listed with an agent. Please contact my agent if you want to put in an offer. So it's imperative that you know whether or not that property is listed with an agent or not. Now, we go into the section where it talks about what type of property it is. You need to know this information because in order for you to help analyze the deal, you want to know, are you dealing with a detached property? Are you dealing with a semi-detached property? Is it land? Is it a row house? Is it a townhouse? Is it condo? And so on. That's going to help you when it comes to figuring out your comps and your after rehab value and so on. So you got to get that question answered. Next question. Can you tell me a little bit about the property? I just want to get a little general information about it. Once again, conversational style. I want that person to open up. That's the purpose for me asking that question that way, because I want that person to really open up and dig and get as much information that I can from that person. Just by asking that question, 9 times out of 10, you can get a lot of your following questions answered from that one question. So you may not have to go through all 10, 11 of these questions that's on the sheet just by that one question. The next section say, can I ask you a question? Sounds like you have a nice property. Why are you selling? Notice the conversational style. I don't want to be an adversary to that seller. I want to be a friend. I want to look upon as someone that seller can talk to comfortably. Once again, this could also go into motivation when I ask that question. If you don't mind me asking, sound like you have a nice property. Why are you selling? Now, let's say the property isn't nice. Let's say the neighborhood has gone down in years. And you know this information because the seller told you that. Wow, sound like you're going through a lot through that property. Neighborhood isn't as good as it was. If you don't mind me asking, why are you selling? Now, here's another way you can do it. Let's say that neighborhood isn't an issue. They just moved there a year ago. Watch how I phrase it again. Wow, it just sounds like you just moved there last year. If you don't mind me asking, why are you selling? I want to get to the motivation. I want to get to the pain. Remember, people make decision on 2 things. Those 2 things is pleasure and pain. And that's what we're looking for. What are those 2 motivating factors? Pleasure or pain. And when we can find the pain, we can find the reason that person needs to sell and the likelihood of that person wanting to sell to us. Remember, I always say, you will never convince a person to sell. Your conversation on that phone is meant for you to convince that person to sell the property to you. Next. You wouldn't happen to know what the properties in your area sell for, would you? Now, remember, I put it in the pose of a you wouldn't happen to know. Think about that. The reason why I said that is I don't want to come out and say what do properties in your area sell for. I want to challenge that person to say, oh yes, I know exactly how much they sell for. They sell for $160,000. Now, when the seller tells you that could be an indication of what they want, or they may follow it up with, but that's not what I'm looking for. My property is in much better condition than those properties. I want 180. You see what just happened? We just was able to get the seller to give us a price. And that's powerful. When you can get that seller to give you a price, 75% of the battle is over. Next. Do your property need any repairs? We already know why we ask this question. It's all about trying to estimate the repairs. Now, of course, you'll have a finite number when you get to the property and walk through it, but on the phone, it doesn't hurt to try to figure out what repairs is needed. How long have you lived there? Now, the reason why I want to know how long they've lived there, because it could go into the whole process of equity or no equity on the property. And here's what I mean by that. If they've been living there over 30 years and there has not been any new mortgages put on the property or a HELOC put on the property, then there could be a situation where the property is free and clear. Or if they're only living there for 5 years, there could be a considerable amount owed on the mortgage balance. So that's a great question to dig deep, especially to all my transaction engineers out there. Mouth getting a little dry. Next question. Is your mortgage current? You already know the reason for that. Determine what's the motivation. Is there motivation here based on pre-foreclosure? Based on a large amount of time in which they have not made mortgage payments? We really want to dig deep on that situation. Number 7. If no, say this. If you don't mind me asking, how many months behind are you? We did it in a cordial way, a polite way. If you don't mind me asking, how many months behind are you? Now, of course, the reason we want to know that is, what is the actual status of that mortgage? 2 months, 5 months, 7 months, 9 months. Now, of course, you don't ask that question unless the person says that their mortgage isn't current. If they say the mortgage is current, you just skip that question. Next question. If you had to take a guess, what do you think you owe on the property? Man, just think about how that sounds. You're not putting any pressure on the person. You're not making that person feel uncomfortable. You're bringing it in a way that that person has no problem or feeling of you taking advantage of them. You're putting that person at ease. This can be one of the hardest questions to get answered, especially for new investors. So this is the way that I would tell you to phrase it. If you don't mind me asking, if you had to take a guess, what do you think you owe on your property? Next page. Number 7. You wouldn't happen to know what your monthly payment is, would you? There you go again. You wouldn't happen to know what your monthly payment is, would you? Now, I want you to understand, and this goes back to the same reason that I gave you for the previous question. But please, I'm not telling you you should say these words verbatim. Look at the spirit in which these words on this page are written. Use your own vernacular, but say them in a way that is based on the spirit of the way that I have them here. That's the key. I don't want everybody to be saying the exact same words. Put your own spin, your own personality, your own voice inflection in the process. But this is going to be the best way to get those difficult questions answered. And at the same time, build rapport. Next question. How much do you need for your property? Now, a lot of investors find that getting that actual seller to say a price is difficult. And we got other parts on this when we get to more objections and we get to the different stroke section, we're going to go into other ways in which you can ask these questions. But the difficult questions don't have to be difficult. If you change the subconscious in your mind to say that this isn't a difficult question, this is a pleasurable question. Remember I said pain, pleasure? Reframe your way of thinking. Make what's painful pleasurable. Make what's pleasurable successful. That's the key. Now, if you don't mind me asking, how did you come up with that number? So once the seller gives us a number, now I'm going to tell you, not every seller is going to give us a number. If you are a person that knows negotiating, if you are a person that has studied negotiating, if you are an experienced investor, you already know if I give that number first, there's a good chance that that person on the other end is going to use it against me, and or I could have gotten more, but because I gave a number, I didn't. So when you're dealing with an experienced investor, that's what they're thinking. They don't want to give you a number. So you will have to come back after you've done your due diligence with that number. But if they do give you a number, your rebuttal is, if you don't mind me asking, how did you come up with that number? And here's the reason why you want to know that. You want to try to understand, is this number that the seller gave you based on fact, or is it based on fiction? How did Mrs. Jackson come up with that number? And most importantly, if the number is wrong, you can politely use that information to renegotiate that price. That's the key. People move off of price based on fact, not based on fiction. Now, there's always the exception to the rule. And the exception to what I just got finished saying is somebody that's going to say, I could care less what you find out. I put this amount of time, I put this amount of effort, and I'm not taking a penny below $180,000. And for that type of situation, if that number doesn't work, there's not a thing you can do about it. The person is hard fast on what they want. Not what they need, what they want. Next one. If you're unable to sell your property, what you going to do? Now, that is a powerful question. Remember we talked about pleasure or pain? You want that person to acknowledge if there is pleasure or pain. Pleasure. Well, if I don't sell it, I'll just hold it for another year. I'm not in a rush. Pain. If I don't sell it, I may wind up losing it. I'm already 4 months behind. So that's the reason for that question. If you don't mind me asking, Ms. Jackson, what you going to do if you're unable to sell the property? These are some powerful anecdotes that you can use, reframing up that actual deal, trying to put that deal together. This will get you the most detailed information you will ever get from a script. And the key part to this, having all the information, having all that detail, will help you put together the best offer to close that deal. Next section. Now, on this section, we talk about how to handle objections and the best way to ask questions that you're going to get from your seller. And this is one of the questions that trips everybody up. Question number one. When the seller tells you, well, who told you I was selling my house? Now, I can't tell you how many times in the past we've gotten that question, especially when you're texting or cold calling or RVMs. Who told you I was trying to sell my house? And here's a good response you can use. Well, no one told us. I mentioned earlier, our company is looking to buy between 5 and 9 houses in your neighborhood. And we're just calling you because I wanted to know if you're interested in selling your property today. Your property just happened to be in that area. That's all. Now, the reason for giving that answer is you do not want that person to think you're targeting them, especially when you're driving for dollars and you're looking at the ugliest house in the best neighborhood. This is a great way to answer those questions about who told you we were selling our property. Another question that you're going to get: how did you get my information? Now, I hear a lot of new investors saying, well, how do you handle that, Charles? Mad scientist, how do you handle that? That's easy. The way you would handle it was to say this. That's a great question. Our company got your information from public records. Think about what I just said. First of all, I'm confirming with that person that that is a great question. My company got your information from public records. And that's the reason why I'm contacting you today. This is how you can really get those difficult situations more smooth. Here's another one. And this is something that we covered a little earlier about that question. And here's the question that gives you the most pain, but turn that pain into pleasure. Here's the question. What is your current mortgage balance? What is your current mortgage balance? I know what you guys are saying. That question always tripped me up. It's going to. Practice makes perfect. Here's how you can handle that question. Just say the following. And I want you to say exactly what I have here. Mr. Jackson, I completely understand the way you may feel. I'm calling you from out of the blue. You don't know me from anyone. And now I'm going to ask you what your mortgage is. Well, the reason I'm asking is because I want to put together the best offer that I can for your property and get it to you as quickly as I can. And you would like that, wouldn't you? Now, after saying that, you wait a few seconds. And if the person still doesn't give you the information, you say this. Not to mention the information that I'm asking you, I could get from public records, but I just want to save that time so that I can give you the best offer that I can. You do want the best offer, don't you? That's how you would answer that question. You say the same rebuttal if the question was on mortgage payment. Not just mortgage balance, but that's the same answer you would give if it was a mortgage payment they would have an objection to giving you. It's powerful. And I even got some other ways in which you can ask that question as well. Let's go down further. Same thing. What is your mortgage payment? Bam. The same thing I just got finished saying earlier, and I have it written right here in the actual e-report. The same thing I just got finished saying earlier is what you can say about the mortgage payment as well. Now, let's go down. Now, for whatever reason, if you're still getting a no, just move on past the question. Just let it go. That's fine. Learn to fight a war another day. Now, here's another way that you can get that, or should I say, get those difficult questions answered. And it's called you just state the opposite. And here's what I mean by that when I say state the opposite. Here's the question. How much do you want for your property? Instead of asking the question that way, state the opposite. I'm guessing you haven't put any thought in how much you want for your property, have you? Guys, I love this stuff. I love structuring and negotiating. Think about that, what I just said. I just made the person feel a little bit inferior because I'm assuming they haven't had any thought of how much they want. Now, they're going to only give you one or two answers when you do that. Oh, yes, I have. I know exactly how much I want. I want $160,000. Which means they're going to correct you. Or, no, you're right. I haven't given it any idea. State the opposite. Here's another way of doing it. Instead of asking a question, how much is your mortgage balance? Another way of saying that is to state the opposite. Like this. You probably have no idea what you owe on the property. Do you? Ingenious! You probably have no idea what you owe on the property, do you? Now, guys, when I do negotiating, you see this hand movement and all this stuff I'm doing I would be doing this kind of stuff on the phone. I like to have fun. I like to bring that energy on the phone. And I have my people who are working in our company do the exact same thing. You gotta liven up the actual conversation. As a matter of fact, I tell everyone to stand up. Stand up when you are on the phone negotiating, structuring, getting questions answered. It's going to bring a whole different feel to that conversation. Next page. The beauty of using the state the opposite strategy is that fact that we also call this a takeaway close. The person who used this will only normally read it in one or two ways. They would either confirm or correct. Yeah, I do know how much I owe. They just corrected you. Yeah, no, I don't know how much I owe. They confirmed. Either way, you're going to get the response that's going to be very non-confrontational. And this is the key to building rapport. The less of a conflict, the more of a friend. This is powerful. Let's continue. For example, when you ask the question, what's your mortgage balance? The way I told you above, state the opposite. This is the key, guys. I give you all the details you need into becoming a 5-star negotiating beast. Now, once your lead sheet is complete, let's go to this section. Once you have all the information, you're only going to have, in most cases, I'm talking most cases, not all cases. When you're a transaction engineer, there's a couple other nuances we're going to have in play, but we're going to deal with this actual report based on in most cases. In most cases, you're going to only have one of 3 outcomes. And here's what I mean by that. Outcome number 1. If the property is free and clear and there's no mortgage, you set up the appointment right away. Once again, once you go over your lead sheet and you find out that this property is free and clear, you set up the appointment right away to go to the property. You don't make the offer on the phone. You set up an appointment right away. And the reason why you're doing that is because the person that has a free and clear property could give you any number that could possibly be accepted based on your offer. You have so many different exit strategies that you could do. And last but not least, you want to actually be able to take your eyes and look at the amount of repairs that's needed on the property. So you go set that appointment up right away. And this is what you would say to do that. What would be a good time for me to come by your property today between 4 and 7 to see it? You notice I didn't say, when can I come by to see your property? I put it in the affirmative. What would be a good time for me to come by to see your property today? A lot of new investors don't affirm what they want in this process. In other words, they give total control of the process over to the seller. And this is what most new investors would say. What would be a good time for me to come by to see your property? And then they'll wait. And the seller will say, oh, you can come by next week if you like. By the time next week get here, you're either not going to reach that seller because they're no longer going to be taking your calls, because someone like me would have came in, saw the property the same day, put an offer on the property, got it under contract, and you are left hanging with the O, a big 0. So you want to make sure that you continue to take control of that situation. And in the event of a property being free or clear, or in the event of you wanting to see the property, in any situation, you say it the way that I have it here. Now, that's if the property is free and clear. I just gave you a synopsis of what you can say and why you want to say it. Outcome number 2. Let's say the property isn't free and clear. There's a low mortgage balance, but you're confident of what properties in the area sell for based on your ability of knowing that neighborhood. You're using your maximum allowable offer formula or whatever formula you want to use. The fact is, you know that area and you're able to tell that seller on that phone call at that point in time, without a second call, without a third call, this is the number that I can give you. And in that situation, you make your offer right then and there on the phone. If there's a low mortgage balance or a considerable mortgage balance and you know the area, you're able to get enough questions to get an estimate of repairs, You make that offer on the phone. And then you use the exact same way to get to the property that I described earlier. Immediately. So if you make that offer on the phone and the seller says yes, you go ahead once again. What would be a good time for me to come by your property today between 4 and 7, between 5 and 8, between 6 and 10, whatever time makes sense for you to see it today. You go there, verify the repair costs, verify the neighborhood, verify everything you need to know. Get that paperwork signed. That's the key. That is why you are in this business, to help that person through that problem and to help you become successful building generational wealth for you and your loved ones. Now, outcome number 3. Let's say for whatever reason, you don't know the value of the neighborhood. You don't know the estimate of repairs of the property. This is what you would tell that owner before you get off the phone. Thank you for your time. Within the next hour, we will be calling you back to give you an offer on your property and let you know the next steps. It should take you no more than 2 hours from the time you get a phone call or you're calling someone to the time you have done all of your due diligence to call them back either with an offer or viewing of that property. No more than 2 hours. Once you get good at this, it takes us 1 hour or less to do all of our due diligence and give an offer on this outcome. Don't sleep on this, guys. This is the real deal. Let's continue. Now, if the seller says no to your offer, you should still email them your credibility kit. Each person gets a letter from us. As soon as we get off the phone with the person, we send them a letter introducing them to our company and our credibility kit. Now, the credibility kit is going to be given to them either by way of email or by way of direct mail. One or the other. We want to stand out. We want that person to know this is our company. We are professionals. Right? We don't just buy houses. We build communities. That's who Chucky Buy Lucky Houses is. There's different ways in which you could say stuff. We already identified that. In this section right here, we're going to go over some of those ways. Here we go. Is this the best number for you? Remember, I said instead of saying that, for example, if you want to get the contact information, is this the best number for you? Different ways to say the question. Another way you can say this. If we need to email you an offer or send you some company information, what's the best email address for you? Now, if you want to find out about property condition, is it okay if I start getting your name and address for the property, please? Or you can say it like this. Can you tell me a little bit about the property? Just general condition and that kind of information, layout and such. If you want to get motivation, different ways to doing that. Different ways in which you can get that answer. Can I ask you a question? This seems to be the type of property we're generally looking for. Or you can say it like this. It sounds like you have a nice property. Or the property looks like it's in a nice neighborhood. Or you own this property for a number of years. Here's the kicker. Why you consider selling it? Remember how I talked about earlier how you could ask this question in all these different ways when you talk about the motivation? That's what I just spelled out for you right here on the motivation section. All the different ways you can ask that question. But the kicker is, Why are you considering selling it? Why are you thinking about selling it? Why you want to get rid of it right now? Remember I said, whatever way that you want to say it based on your pattern of speech, that's fine. Now, if you want to get the equity question answered, how long have you lived there? Now, if the seller owned the property for more than 30 years, say this. That probably means that you don't have a mortgage to pay off. Do it, since you've been there for about 30 years. However, if the seller hasn't lived there for 30 years, you say this. You wouldn't happen to know what the balance of your mortgage is, would you? If you decide you want to sell the property to us, will we need to pay off any taxes or mortgages on the property? What would that be? Here's another one. You want to get the asking price. I haven't had time to do any research on your property yet. Do you happen to know or have an idea of what properties in your area are selling for? This is gorgeous, guys. There's another way you can ask that. If you were to give me a number, what would you like to walk away with? Cash in pocket. If you gave me a number today. And next, if you want to get them to go lower than that number, you say something like this. Is that the best that you can do? If you had to sharpen your pencil, wake up in the morning the next day, and know that you gave Chucky by Lucky Houses the best opportunity to buy your property, what would that bottom drop dead number absolute be that you want to walk away with? I think the bottom line to all of this stuff that we're talking about, negotiating, your script, different strokes, all of this rebuilds around one key factor: building rapport. Here are a number of softening statements that you can use to build rapport. Now, what's a softening statement? A softening statement is a way to tell somebody that they're wrong, or to object to something that you did wrong and rephrase the actual framing of the conversation. For example, so if the person say, well, why do you need to know my mortgage information? It's not because I want to. Good question. That's important. People like to know or hear that you agree with them. Another one. I'm glad you asked me that. You see how that could fit in a lot of different situations? Another one. I was hoping you were going to bring that up. Another one. That's very insightful. Another one. Nobody ever asked me that before. Remember, softening statements. Now, here's a number of softening statements you can use in response to your seller's statement. If your seller says something that could be a hard type of problem or issue, that makes a lot of sense. I know exactly how you feel. I can appreciate that. That's an excellent point. I appreciate your candor in sharing that with me. Notice the fluctuation in my voice. Notice the expressions that you can hear in my voice. Now, I know you're watching this through video. You can see it, but you can actually hear how I'm feeling through that telephone. Lastly, put that seller in a multi-touch campaign. And there's 6 different modalities for that. Face-to-face is one. Number 2 is a cold call. You can do a direct mail piece. You can do a ringless voicemail. You can do a text message piece. You can do a email. There's so many different ways in which you could touch that person through multiple modalities. Make sure that you touch that person at least 3 to 5 different ways. Keep this in mind. The next person you speak with, you could be the person that helps that person out of that problem, and that person could help you from your situation as well. And that, my friend, is my complete 5-star cold calling script and negotiations blueprint.